Okay, hi there. Welcome everybody to a revision video looking at Edexcel Paper 1, which is on the 15th of May. Markets and business behaviour, worth 35% of the grade. Here's the breakdown of the exams and the dates for 2024. Keep in mind, of course, that two of the papers are before half term this year. So by the time you have that little half term break in the summer, you'll have done 70% of the exam, which is handy because then you've got a nice 2-week gap before the synoptic paper on Friday the 7th of June. Now keep in mind also that everything you revise for paper 1 and paper 2 is useful for paper 3. There's no new material at all in paper 3. Nothing new to revise over half term. Obviously there's subtle differences in the paper's composition, and we'll do some revision on paper 3 in the days and weeks ahead. So what I thought I'd do today is just quickly look at with you some ideas for paper 1, focusing initially on the longer term answers. So 10 marks, 12 marks, 15 and 25. Obviously the 10, the 12 and the 15 are in the data response. Typically with the 10 mark question, we're looking for one developed KAA paragraph, sometimes two, depends on what the question's asking for, look to see. And typically there'll be a diagram in there to support. Indeed, the diagram may take the place of the second KAA paragraph. Two separate but short evaluation points. Do read the question carefully to see what's called for. 12 marks, same structure really, two KAA paragraphs, nearly always a diagram in there, and again two separate but relatively short evaluation points. 15 marks, the last part of the data response, usually two KAA paragraphs plus a diagram, two separate evaluation points. And then we get to the 25 marker, two KAA paragraphs plus a diagram, maybe two diagrams, who knows if you have time, providing they're relevant, and crucially two separate and developed evaluation points. And with the 25 marker we need to see a final reasoned judgment for the highest evaluation marks. But in the 10, the 12 and the 15 we don't need introductions and conclusions. Don't waste time on those. Answer the question, move quickly and smartly on to the next question. Now with the 25 marker, thinking about the layout, recommended time, well, hopefully give yourselves at least 25 minutes to write the 25 marker, ideally half an hour. If you can smash section A in less than 20 minutes, you'll be in good shape, and don't overwrite on the data response. 25 mark essay style question, 5 paragraphs, plus at least one, perhaps two supporting analysis diagrams. In order, KAA 1, Evaluation 1, KAA 2, Evaluation 2, and then the judgment at the end. Leave a few lines between each paragraph. Make sure you clearly delineate each paragraph because it's levels of response. The exams will be marking those paragraphs and giving it a level. And if you write an amorphous mass of text which nobody can read, it's very hard to differentiate between KAA and evaluation, for example. And of course, you'll need application in every single paragraph. Most of the application you get from the extracts. Be judicious in your handling of that kind of data. You can use your own knowledge, of course, particularly maybe in the final reasoned judgment. It's essentially a chance to show off. What about themes? Well, I'm not predicting the exam. I'm just thinking aloud really here. So oftentimes in paper 1, we get some juicy applied micro questions related to market failure. Who knows? It could be vaping this year, e-waste from disposal of our growing mountain of electronic items, the energy drinks market, which we'll look at in a second. I think housing is a really good micro topic. It's also a good synoptic question. The economics of renewable energy, in particular, not just the demand and supply and impact of it, but also the decommissioning costs of things like wind turbines. And then obviously we'll be expecting some market structure questions. They're looking for markets where there's a changing supply and or demand dynamic. Things are happening. Prices, cost, profits, competition is changing. So I think I'll do an industry profile on the ready meals market. It's really quite interesting, but also the growth of other subscription services, maybe including low-cost gyms. The food delivery industry, the parcel delivery sector might be a focus, or other contestable markets. Obviously, the energy sector, the utility there, energy industry, the problems facing smaller suppliers, many of whom have left the markets because of the price caps. Car insurance, pet insurance, huge increases in insurance costs and premiums for customers. What's happening? Why is it happening? What are the consequences? And then the big ones, water, the case for and against nationalisation, the externalities of the sewage crisis. I'm sure you've been following that. The rail industry or any other transport sectors. It could be city buses. It could be the question there about sustainability, economics of the rail industry, price caps on bus transport. And who knows, they might well choose an industry where there's lots happening as they emerge, often in a fragile state from the pandemic. Airlines, cinemas, farming. Who knows? The key is to use the data and the extracts and to write good answers. So let's have a look at a question. Let's walk through it. I was just thinking of an industry of interest to me, and I chose energy drinks. Here's a question: to what extent should the UK government intervene in the market for energy drinks? Take a moment, by the way, in the video to press the pause button if you want to take a screenshot or read through the extracts in a bit more detail. But sales of energy drinks in the UK are booming, up double digits every year. Of course, 2022, we had the emergence of Prime Hydration, the brainchild, if that's the right phrase, of Logan Paul and KSI. KSI is not as important as KAA, of course. Immense popularity. I was in Asda once where there's queues outside the shop, not for choo-choo beanies, but for Prime Hydration bottles. Bottles being sold for £100 plus on such as eBay. Nice bit of a such as seasoning there. The industry is an important one because obviously a lot of these energy drinks and sports drinks contain a huge amount of caffeine per can, multiple times what you find in a cup of coffee, and of course very high in sugar as well. Now this is really interesting. The reason why I've chosen this is a little case study. Look at the growth in the consumption of sports and energy drinks, up from 800 million litres in 2017 to nearly 1 trillion litres in 2022, and here's that probably broke through that figure last year. Obviously a downturn in the pandemic, but very strong growth since in the sports and energy drink market. And these are the big players: Red Bull. By the way, this is data from convenience stores, so not necessarily supermarkets, but from the likes of One Stop and Nissa and Spar, convenience stores. They produce really good data, and Red Bull, Monster, Lucozade lead the way. Obviously dominance of those kind of brands there, with Prime coming in with £15.5 million of sales just in convenience stores last year alone. So when you're structuring a 25 marker, this is what I would suggest you do. Other teachers may have different ideas, but these are just Geoff's suggestions. A 5-paragraph answer: KAA point 1, then evaluate, KAA point 2, then evaluate, and then critically, we are looking for a final reasoned judgment. The question is, should the government intervene in these kind of markets? Interesting question. Well, I remember my economics professor saying to me, if there are externalities in the market or other market failures, there is a case for intervention. The question is, how strong is the case, and if so, what interventions might be justified? So typically we intervene in markets when there's one or more market failures. So typically, I think immediate ones come to mind will be information failures, where perhaps consumers perceive the marginal benefit to them as being higher than it actually is, or maybe they're underestimating the costs. A lot of students immediately would think externalities from consumption. The impact on youth health, including mental health, maybe the impact on addiction, and the extra burdens on the NHS, including dental care. So there's obviously very good opportunities with those two for analysis diagrams in your KAA. It could be an information failure diagram here, where people's perceived marginal private benefit is higher than if they had better information. So with limited information, they overconsume, they consume Q2, whereas with better information, they might scale back their consumption to Q1, where the demand curve is to the left. You might throw in, you don't have to do this, you might throw in the externalities argument there, that consumption leads to negative externalities. So marginal social cost lies above marginal private cost, because you're adding the external cost there. Alternatively, you could just draw an externalities diagram if you wanted to, showing the negative externalities from consumption here. Don't forget, this is for the Edexcel board. AQA has other diagrams. And crucially, of course, here what you're trying to show is that there's overconsumption. Q1 is the consumption, the private optimum. Q3 would be the consumption if we take the externalities into account. Of course, ABC becomes the net or deadweight welfare loss. So lots of opportunities to bring in some analysis is that enough for government intervention? And then maybe as part of the answer, consider the possible options for intervention. Could it be taxation? Could it be tougher regulations, including raising the age limits or banning the sale of energy drinks in vending machines in schools and colleges, under 16s, for example, under 18s? Could you possibly bring in a minimum pricing scheme, aka similar to what's happened in Scotland with their alcohol? And of course, in the evaluation, you want to build into the evaluation a critique of intervention. I'll talk you through that in a second. So in terms of structure of the answer, you might start with information failure, the information failure leading to overconsumption. Perhaps young people who are predominantly drinkers of energy drinks. Perhaps they're unaware of the long-term health impacts. Perhaps there's some behavioural economics there. They're following the herd, new social norms. But equally, the evaluation, is that a case for intervention? Well, many products are available for sale to young people, including other drinks containing caffeine in tea and coffee. Are we going to ban those? Are we going to introduce laws on those drinks as well? And instead of intervening with regulations and bans and taxes, perhaps the approach should be to have a soft intervention through behavioural nudges, information campaigns. Perhaps they might be more effective than harder interventions. Second point, obviously, would be externalities, the increased costs on the NHS, including dental care, school outcomes, educational consequences from increased blood pressure, sleep disturbance, headaches, stomach aches, hyperactivity, dental issues and type 2 diabetes. It's important, I think, to think, if you're writing this, don't just think about the concept of external cost in isolation. Try and link it to something. So, for example, blood pressure and diabetes then. On the other hand, if you have externalities, yes, there's a case for intervention, but it's not always easy to measure and also to put a value on the external costs. And would interventions be effective? Consumers might seek out loopholes that undermine their effectiveness. Critically, in the 25 mark, you're looking to come to a final reasoned judgment. So we're looking for maybe a final paragraph of somewhere between 6 and 8 lines linked back to the question. Now, crucially, when you're writing these longer answers and any question really on intervention in markets, carbon taxes, carbon trading, minimum wages, what have you, taxes, subsidies, always think about the 3 E's. Always think about the 3 E's: effectiveness, efficiency, and equity. So effectiveness, does a policy work? If you can challenge and cast some doubt on whether a policy is effective, of course that depends in part on elasticity, then you can say, well, there might be better alternatives, and you can bring that into your evaluation. Or you might need a combination of policies to really have an impact. Efficiency, does a policy lead to a more efficient allocation of scarce resources? Are we improving allocative efficiency? Are we moving closer towards a social optimum? Are there net welfare gains from an intervention? Or is there the risk of government failure of one or more types, which actually could cause a worse thing, a deeper market failure? And equity basically refers to fairness. So what is the impact on different groups? If you tax or subsidise or ban things, which groups are particularly affected? And obviously that often brings in the idea of the impact on households of below average income. I just want to twist here. So this is a similar topic. You could use exactly the same extracts and ask a different question. To what extent will introducing a minimum price on energy drinks improve the health of the population? Interesting question. Now, with a minimum price on energy drinks, what we're trying to do here is raise the price above the normal equilibrium. So it has to be above P1, and hopefully, if the demand curve is the marginal private benefit curve, if prices are higher at retail level, there will be a contraction up the demand curve. There will be a fall in consumption. Now, of course, that is key. We're not trying to increase supply here. The famous question on the Edexcel board, which suggests that a minimum price would cause excess supply. Well, it's not designed to stimulate supply, although retailers might make more money. The aim is to reduce consumption. Now, what I would do in this diagram, on this same diagram, I would add in another line. You see, the impact of a minimum price depends on the coefficient of elasticity. So if you do that, so that diagram turn to that. D2 is more elastic. So in this situation, the same increase in the minimum unit price has a bigger effect on the units consumed. Now, Edexcel like students in the exam who develop a diagram. And oftentimes, if you change the elasticity, you can build that into your analysis and your evaluation. In this situation, the minimum price might be a little bit more effective. Just finish off by thinking about final judgments. So in the 25 markers, we are looking for students to come to a reasoned judgment, but avoid conclusions that just repeat points or just generic. So let me show you two paragraphs. One is in front of you. You might want to press the pause button to read through. To what extent will introducing a minimum price on energy drinks improve the health of the population? Well, here's the first one. In conclusion, minimum prices will improve the population's health if people respond rationally, but many consumers are not rational in their choices, and therefore minimum price on energy drinks is unlikely to have much impact on the population's health. Well, that doesn't really say much. It's not really a reasoned judgment. There's not really anything added there. And you could probably spend 3 minutes writing that and gain virtually no credit whatsoever. Let me contrast with this one. Overall is a nice, good phrase to use because it hints at reasoned judgment. So overall, minimum prices should, in theory, improve the population's health if people respond rationally. However, in practice, the effectiveness or the efficacy of price floors might be low because consumers don't typically behave rationally. They often have strong default behaviour towards those brand leaders we saw on the chart, Red Bull and Monster, which a minimum price would be unlikely to change. And we could debate also what we mean by an energy drink. That could be part of the evaluation. And I love this next phrase. Much depends on the cost and availability of healthier alternatives. And then again, throwing in at the end a little bit of a reasoned judgment. On balance, I favour using taxes which raise revenue rather than imposing minimum retail prices. Now, that kind of final paragraph, I think, works well in this kind of question. It's reasoned, it's nuanced, has a bit of application, bit of evaluation in there, and good use of concepts. So I would prefer this paragraph to this one because this is just too generic. It doesn't say much. This really does link back to the question. There we go. I hope you found this session useful. Loads more revision videos coming up on the exams. Stay happy, stay curious, stay positive. Thanks for joining in, and see you sometime soon.